Hello, everyone. Welcome to New Polity's podcast. I am happily joined by Ruben Slife. Hello.
Hello.
We are here, and I am very excited to discuss this. Wait for it. This. The message of His Holiness Pope Leo XIV for the 60th World Day of Social Communications, with a title that I don't know that he wrote, but is on the English document, Preserving Human Voices and Faces. Why Ruben?
I don't know.
I'll tell you why. I was hoping you wouldn't know, because then I can reveal it.
Okay.
Things are best saved for the podcast. Mm-hmm. In every man, there are two horses, and he is like a chariot holding on to two sets of reins. And one horse is the papal proof texter, and the other horse is the attentive listener. And the papal proof texting horse is strong in me. When I see a document that's critical about AI chatbots, my instinctual, you might even say equine reaction, is to say, the Pope agrees with me. And now I have a few sentences to prove it. And I let that horse gallop. And it tips the chariot over, because that's not the way to read a message from your Father at all. Then I thought, but I'm weak. I'm inadequate to hold that horse at bay. Who do I know who can drive that horse, tame that horse, beat that horse, like in Brothers Karamazov? Well, and then I thought of Ruben Slife. That's you.
Okay.
That's where you come in. Ruben, there are many good things I can say about you. I won't embarrass you, because it's a long list. But one of them is that you're a careful reader, and you pay attention and you listen where others jump to conclusions. But finally, you love listening to the popes. And you've been a good example in my life of how to do it and how not to do it, and how to allow yourself to be led, like, rather than trying to wrangle with the authority of the church so that it serves you. So I thought, let's get Ruben as help, aid and assistance, and remedy for my defects.
Okay.
Anyways, what about you? Why are you here?
I thought I was here to do a podcast.
You are. This is going to be a marvelous podcast.
Even though you told me not to prepare for this, I sat down and read a bunch of things the Pope said.
I was hoping you would.
This Pope, previous Pope. There's only one Pope, really, in a way.
It's Peter.
So decided I should get the background for AI stuff, which I haven't followed.
Yeah.
But I have read a lot of the Pope. So
Ruben has, actually, I will say, he's approaching something of an authority on, becoming an authority, I should say, on what the popes have said.
Okay, well.
Yeah.
We'll see about that.
But in any case, you also have a broader sense of where this address here from the Pope fits in to a history of papal addresses and teachings and the current conversation on AI. And I will say you also are, of all my friends, remarkably unperturbed and unworried and breezy, frankly, about AI.
I don't know if that's true.
I think it is.
Okay, well, let's talk about it.
And that's good, because I'm not. I'm like I wake up, I bang my head against AI, I cry, I go to work. So I want, anyway. So thank you for being here. Now, I want to do something in the spirit of listening, which they do not recommend on how to market your podcast classes, which we've all attended. They don't recommend this, but we're going to do it, which is we're going to read it.
We're going to read the Pope's message.
Yeah. Okay. We're not going to choose the things we want to read. We're going to read the whole thing. That doesn't mean we're going to say a lot about everything, but we are going to, and with you listening right now, God bless you. Thank you for being a part of this. You're marvelous. You're not here. You're an invisible presence, but I believe that I can communicate, and you can listen, and we can participate, because I can't. The point is that you're here in some strange fashion, and so you are also reading with us and listening with us, and thank you for doing that. So let's just get into it. You get into it?
Okay.
All right. You want to read it?
I can do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can take turns too. If
Yeah. Papal documents are generally a little thick, can be a little bit like wading through Jello sometimes. So it's not always the most fun thing to sit down and read. So I suppose reading it aloud will make it a little more accessible. And then it will let people know what we're talking about when we proceed to talk about it. Okay. Dear brothers and sisters, our faces and voices are unique, distinctive features of every person. They reveal a person's own unrepeatable identity and are the defining elements of every encounter with others. The ancients understood this well. To define the human person, the ancient Greeks used the word face, prosopon, because it expresses etymologically what is before one's gaze, the place of presence and relationship. The Italian term person, from per sonare, on the other hand, evokes the idea of sound, not just any sound, but the unmistakable sound of someone's voice. Faces and voices are sacred.
Let's stop there, maybe.
Yeah.
That idea of the face as summarizing the person or being the seat of the person, as the Pope says, the place of presence and relationship. I just want to dwell on for a moment because it's true. And I think it seems like such a commonplace at the same time, right? Like obviously the face is the seat of expression. It's where we speak from, we speak from out of it. And so everything that is most personal, or what we most associate with, which makes us a unique creature, our intelligence, is both manifest in and then expressed through our faces. And because of this, our unique and personal identity, of course, is expressed in the face and then the voice. I was watching a piano player playing a piece by Beethoven, and the entire audience was on one side of him. It was sort of a house concert. And I noticed that one side of his face, the side on which everyone was looking, was becoming slightly red. And the other side of his face was not. And this is actually a phenomenon that scientists have noticed, that when you're being looked at from one side, that side of your face will actually blush in accordance and not the other one, which is wild to me. But one of the things it suggests as well, and I just want to sort of add this to affirm to what the Pope's saying, is that the face is also the place where we feel others as well. So if you think about the face that's burning in shame or in embarrassment, right, or the face that lights up in reaction to seeing the one you love, the presence of the other person, it's not just like an expressive reality where you're just beaming yourself out at others. It's also a receptive reality where you feel the world and you can feel your own reactions on your face, and it is speaking of that social embeddedness of man.
Yeah, one interesting thing here is that, one, we just know that it's true. Mm-hmm. I mean, faces and voices are unique and distinct. Yep. I mean, completely. Mm-hmm. You occasionally see somebody and think, oh, that person looks a lot like, but you almost never think that person is someone other. At least, maybe if you know someone slightly at a distance or something. But you get to know people well, and you can even, hear them sneeze down the hall or something and know which one of them it is.
Yeah, totally.
Coughing things, which are very, we don't consider them rational acts, sure. But we still know who it is. Mm-hmm. The other thing is that this way of approaching the question, because he is writing here about AI, and he starts with faces and voices, relates the personhood of the human being, not just to rationality or to the abstract word, but to the voice and to the face, to the concrete embodied person, which is something we know. I mean, we all know that's true, that the person is not just his ideas or the things he's written or some sort of abstract position or ability to reason or think or reach conclusions or produce this or that, but it's an individual who exists in a body. And to say that this has always been understood. The Greeks understood this, even if they expressed it one way and the Romans expressed it in another. The concreteness of the personhood has always been grasped. He goes on to say, faces and voices are sacred. If I can pick up reading again.
Please.
He continues by giving a reason for it. God, who created us in his image and likeness, gave them to us when he called us to life through the word he addressed to us. It seems like the root of the sacredness is how would you put it, being in conversation with God, that when he addresses us in the beginning, as it were, even the beginning of our lives, he calls out someone with an individuality, with an individual face, a unique person, and a voice that responds.
Yeah.
So,
and I would say this is different than the other animals. So one objection that one might have to being said that the face and the voice are sacred is to say, well, dogs have faces and chickens have voices. If I could do better than that, but we'll keep things somewhat tame here.
Sure we do.
Yes. And what's the Pope indicates here is that a difference in the way that man is created in his beginning, and the difference between him and the other animals. So if you'll recall in Genesis, the other animals are created and it's described as according to their kind, right? So you don't actually have this description of the creation of an individual animal.
Right.
And most notably, once you speak about kinds, you also don't have a description of the creation of the sexes either, right? So the kind of animal, the species, as later philosophy will call it, is the male and female considered together as one reality. And so whether it's the cow or the fox.
Yeah, the animals are fundamentally kinds.
Kinds, exactly. And Aquinas, but I think it's just purely common sense, like just hang out with cats for a little while, will say that as a consequence of the form or the mode of their creation, animals also repeat their species life. So he'll say that their individual life, which is real because they're individual in the sense of one is not the other, right? They're separated out. The foxes are different, but that their individual life is subordinated to their species life, right? Whereas in man, it's the reverse. That when God creates man, there's this very moving part of Genesis where John Paul II speaks of it as he seems to go back into himself, and then say, let us create man in his own image, and then in our own image. Sorry, I should not just garble the words of God. Bad form. Let us make man in our own image. And when he does so, he then creates them, and it says for the first time that he creates them, and then male and female he created them. So for the first time, there's a twofoldness, individuality.
There's a distinction made in the text.
And I think the faces and voice, what we might know very pragmatically looking at animals, which is, animals sure all seem alike. And yeah, they have amazing voices in a certain sense, but all the sparrows make the same sounds. Mm-hmm. And you can predict entirely all the sounds that a cow will make. Yes, they have throats, and there's this analogy between man and the animals, of course, but there is a sameness that seems proper to them, and an exchangeability that seems proper to the other animals that is not proper to man. And that in his face and in his voice, it gives testimony to a unique mode of creation, which then Aquinas will say is the creation of the soul ex nihilo. So when God creates man, every time he creates man, every individual person is new. You have the creation of the 6 days, but there's a way in which God is still working even now in every single creation of a person.
You see this in Genesis.
Yeah.
I mean, the way Adam and Eve are treated, I mean, obviously there's archetypes, but they're also individual people, quite clearly. I mean, they commit individual sins, and then you have their children who are named individually and do individual things. And we're simply given no account of anything like this in regard to any of the animals. I mean, you could maybe accept the serpent, but that has generally been read also as an intelligence, a personal intelligence. So, yeah, I mean, this is the individuality of the human being comes from the fact that he is you could say, a conversation partner with God from the beginning. This is clear even in the Bible, in the earliest passages. Okay, he called us to life through the word he addressed to us. The word resounded down the centuries through the voices of the prophets, and then became flesh in the fullness of time. We too have seen and heard this word, in which God communicates his very self to us, because it has been made known to us in the face and voice of Jesus, the Son of God. From the moment of creation, God wanted man and woman to be his interlocutors. And as St. Gregory of Nyssa explained, he imprinted on our faces a reflection of divine love, so that we may fully live our humanity through love. Preserving human faces and voices, therefore, means preserving this mark, this indelible reflection of God's love. We are not a species composed of predefined biochemical formulas. Each of us possesses an irreplaceable and inimitable vocation that originates from our own lived experience and becomes manifest through interaction with others.
Okay.
I'd like to pause there.
Please.
And say that this is an emphasis that comes up repeatedly in the magisterial interactions with AI. First of all, as I said, that the fact that man is embodied. There's a document from the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, Antiqua et Nova, on AI that begins by saying this, that yes, man has a body and man has a soul, but it would be wrong to think of them as two things. You got the body going, you got the soul going on. So instead it says, and I should probably just pull it up here and read it. Yeah, slight pause.
Slife pause.
Don't do that to me.
You got it.
Relationality. Well, okay, maybe I shouldn't pull it up because I can't find it. Yeah, that was a bad idea. Basically, both things always... there it is. Rather, the entire person is simultaneously both material and spiritual.
Mm-hmm. And sorry, that's Antiqua et Nova.
Antiqua et Nova, paragraph 16, if you wish to look it up. The entire human person is simultaneously both material and spiritual. And the soul is not merely the immaterial part of the person contained within the body, nor is the body an outer shell housed in an intangible core. Rather, the entire human person is simultaneously both material and spiritual. This understanding reflects the teaching of sacred scripture, which views the human person as a being who lives out relationships with God and others, and thus an authentically spiritual dimension, within and through this embodied existence. And the other thing is that along with that, the documents constantly speak of human experience as being a necessary effect of a necessary implication of the way man is rational. So the Pope's message here speaks of the human vocation as, what does it say, emerging from?
Because of this, because I mean, you have to kind of back it up, but because of our human... because our human faces and voices are an indelible reflection of God's love, we are not a species composed of predefined biochemical formulas. And then he just says, each of us possesses an irreplaceable and inimitable vocation that originates from our own lived experience. and becomes manifest through interaction with others.
So we find it in our experience.
Well, and it originates from up out of, like we have the vocation we have. I mean, the way I'm reading this kind of grammatically is that we have the irreplaceable and imitable vocation we have because we're the kind of being that grows and lives in and has experience as a fundamental category.
So Antiquae Nova here, paragraph 31, says human intelligence develops organically through the person's physical and psychological growth, shaped by a myriad of lived experiences in the flesh.
Yep. Does that trouble you? That sort of thought? Well, I'm thinking about, for instance, the some of the church's tradition, some of the church fathers, that might seem to suggest that the image of God in man, for instance, is not in the body, but is in the soul. I know that the image of God question is a little different, but I'm thinking about that language because the face, which is our body, is being described as a indelible reflection of God's love. And if that's the case, then it seems like our very bodies seem to be images of God in some sense, which, again, it's
sure.
It's just there's this background debate about that.
No, I mean, it doesn't trouble me. I think the important thing here is the connection between life and intelligence.
Okay.
That it's a living thing which is intelligent, and here it's speaking of man's individuality as coming from God, who calls man into being as an interlocutor, the Pope says, a conversation partner. And this develops through the course of man's actual historical life, your real experiences. And so intelligence here, and there's a lot on this in Antiquae Nova, is engaging. Intelligence is an engagement with the actual life one is living. And so it's fundamentally interpersonal. First of all, in some sense, with God, but in a more immediate sense, with other human beings. Mm-hmm. And it develops historically as insight into the circumstances, the situations, the actual experiences that one has. Because what is one understanding other than one's own life and one's life in relation to others?
Yeah.
Through the body.
Yeah.
In the body. I think that's an important aspect of what the Pope is saying.
Why is that so important? Because I think someone might say that seems obvious or like, because you exist as a body that gains things through the senses and through the concrete reality of living.
Well, I think it's important. Well, it's important, one, because the Pope actually says it.
Sure.
And so if you're looking at the emphasis he himself has here, he is talking about not just that you have a vocation in some abstract way, but the vocation originates from our own lived experience. Mm-hmm. It's not just a sort of like Kantian free-floating call of God out there, but
Gotcha.
You find it by engaging with what you actually are.
Gotcha.
And becomes manifest through interaction with others. So that's what he actually says. And I think it's important when interpreting the Pope to look at what he actually says. But on the other hand, it's important because that the Church has had, to this point, I mean, before this document from Leo, in its discussion of AI, on the difference between human intelligence and artificial intelligence. And this is in large part of the difference. The way you just sketched it, some people would say, we all learned through the senses, turns it all into a pure instrument that could be otherwise. But this is not so. It's not as though man is just a calculating thing that wants to reach, content or positions or whatever intellectually and must go through this. But the human being himself is significant. That means the human being's actual life experience, his actual history, his actual relationships. And intelligence can't be separated from this because he's bodily and spiritual at once.
Yes.
That human intelligence is a thing that exists only in and for the sake of the life of the whole being.
Right. I think that's...
And so to interpret AI at all, you have to interpret it in that context. Like, what is it really? And what it is not is human intelligence. And Antiqua et Nova is like a, about 30-page document from the Nicaea for the Doctrine of Faith, and that's one of its main points, is that human intelligence is this broad thing embedded in a life.
Yeah.
And artificial intelligence is purely calculative, and doesn't even involve understanding, much less relationship or experience.
Yeah. And we'll get there. I think what you're drawing from this, I hope that it doesn't sound like I'm taking all of this and then making a sort of metaphysical point. I just see it in conjunction with something that I've always really loved in Aquinas. He takes as a sort of hypothetical the question of what would happen if you took our souls, our rational soul, and put it in the soul of a wolf. Or in the body of a wolf, sorry.
Aquinas says this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's in somewhere in this Summa Contra, the word I can never pronounce.
Gentiles? I don't know.
Gentiles or Gentiles, or I don't know how you would say it. But that's my own problem.
So what if we had a wolf body instead?
Yeah. So what do you think he
took our
says?
soul.
So obviously he knows this can't happen, but what if? Take out the soul of the wolf, stick in the soul of the man.
I mean, it wouldn't.
Yeah, we know it won't work, but like...
Well, I don't know what he says. It depends on where he's heading with it. But
that's pretty cool, though, because what he says is that the wolf body would transform into a man. I'm not kidding. This is what he says, and it's so obvious.
No, I didn't see that coming.
What did you see coming?
I not that. I mean, anything but that. Anything but that.
It's extreme. This is why I love.
I mean, the soul is the form of the body.
Exactly.
So the soul makes the body.
Now you feel dumb for not guessing. Exactly.
I feel dumb for not guessing.
Exactly.
Yes.
But that's how most people feel after reading Aquinas. So, yes, Aquinas says that the wolf would become a man. Now, I bring this up because that's actually profound. Because what it means is that the body is not incidental to the soul, right? But as you just said, quoting Aristotle and others, the soul is the form of the body. So what that means is the kind of body we have, right, is the kind of body for knowing, for intelligence, for thinking. One way to say the same thing would be like, if you are going to have an embodied intelligence who's not an angel, who's not God, but who is in a body, then there is no other body but the one that we see in man and woman that could arise out of that unity of spirit and flesh, of form and matter. And the reason I think this is important is because the face then and the voice are, I think, profoundly, if you don't want to call it an image of the soul, because there could be some problems there, are profoundly revelatory of the kind of being we are, and not, as you say,
window to the soul.
A window to the soul. I mean, everything we think about very normally and naturally when we say things like, say that to my face, or look me in the eye, and this whole idea that the Pope begins with, where it's like the who and what we are is most expressed in our face and our unique voices, and they are sacred as such. They are holy. I think that just checks out metaphysically. Like they are what happens to matter when it is espoused to an intellectual soul.
If the human being is sacred, which is a very established principle here,
checks out,
and the individuality of the human being as a concrete individual person who is in relationship with God and therefore with other human beings, I mean, that is expressed in the face and in the voice.
Yeah.
So if the human being is sacred, then the things that fundamentally express the individual relationality of the human being are sacred. That's the face and the voice.
Do you not know your body is a temple? And then furthermore, do you not know that temples have inner sanctums? Right? Like a space in which the very holiness of the temple is recapitulated and most expressed.
Okay, so let's continue here. Preserving human faces and voices, I'm skipping back a little to prepare. Preserving human faces and voices, therefore, means preserving this mark, this indelible reflection of God's love. Skip down a bit to where we left off. If we fail in this task of preservation, digital technology threatens to alter radically some of the fundamental pillars of human civilization that at times are taken for granted. Brief comment. That's a big statement. There are pillars of human civilization, fundamental pillars of human civilization that we take for granted because we assume they can't go anywhere. He's saying we are creating a threat of altering radically fundamental pillars of human civilization that we assumed would always be there.
And right away this is
big.
Yeah. And right away he's beginning to say that civilization is what it is on the basis of how we treat the face and voice. Yeah. Like he's drawing these two together. Like if you do this to the voice and the face, then beware civilization, which I think that might seem trite. I don't know, but it seems to me, I at least have been dealing with certain interlocutors for whom civilization seems to be independent of the person, and it works both ways. So there's people that say
actual humanity.
Yeah, where people say things like, "Well, civilization's going to the dogs and it's going to crumble, but I can still do X, Y, and Z because I'm technically being moral or whatever," or the vice versa, which is like, the civilization is well, I guess it's the same thing. Anyways,
so what does the Pope say? He continues, by simulating human faces and voices, wisdom and knowledge, consciousness and responsibility, empathy and friendship, the systems known as artificial intelligence not only interfere with information ecosystems, but also encroach upon the deepest levels of communication. The deepest level of communication, that of human relationships.
You can see why I brought you in. This was the line that made me think I need to talk to Ruben because I'm feeling too good about this.
No, this is significant. He makes a list of things: simulating human faces and voices, simulating wisdom and knowledge, simulating consciousness and responsibility, simulating empathy and friendship. We are encroaching upon human relationships themselves. This is significant. I think it's also obvious.
Yeah.
Anyone who is paying attention to what communication is, what relationship is, what being human is, understands this. One significant thing here is that the Pope lists all of these as simulating. It's simulating all this. It doesn't possess any of it. Mm-hmm. Okay. He continues. The challenge, therefore, is not technological, but anthropological, which can only mean that it has does not have just a technological solution, but an anthropological one.
That's how I read it. And I think just to make that concrete, I think often with chatbots, the idea is, and I should give honor and praise to the people that do look at it and say, yeah, there's something wrong here. But then they say, we need a technological solution. So let's make the same thing, but with all of these safety guards. Let's do the same. How can we imagine this, but with no danger? Yeah. Which is good. Yeah. I'm not critiquing that. Like I want to find a use for this marvelous technology, right? Yeah. But the simulation of human faces and voices, as a anthropological and not a technological challenge, like the challenge in the sense of we are being challenged by it.
Yeah.
We need to rise up to this challenge. We need to meet it head on. And the Pope is advising as we go about this, don't look at the technological, look at the anthropological.
Yeah, it's a question of what does it mean to be human, and what does it mean to make a world in which human beings can be human. To build a human world in which human beings can be human, instead of for humans to build an inhuman world in which it's very hard for humans to be human. And a parallel here from previous papal stuff, I think, would be in Laudato Si, where Francis talks about carbon credits, for example. It's a similar thing. People are trying to produce a technical solution to a thing they view as a purely technical problem. And he says, well, the difficulty with this is that it evades human responsibility. It tries to substitute a technical solution for being an actual person. Mm-hmm. You don't really want to be human. You want to abdicate responsibility, hand it off to a system and say it handles it. Mm-hmm. This doesn't mean the system is necessarily a bad idea. The problem is the abdication. The system is designed to produce results as though we are good people without us having to be. And therefore, we don't have to be.
Boy, that just reminds me of everything we ever talk about. Thinking about capitalism.
So let's continue.
Oh.
Safeguarding faces and voices ultimately means safeguarding ourselves. Again, it's a question of what does it mean to be human? Embracing the opportunities offered by digital technology and artificial intelligence with courage, determination, and discernment does not mean turning a blind eye to critical issues, complexities, and risks. Brief pause. One interesting thing about this document, as opposed to most, at least most previous magisterial documents on the question of AI, is that this one starts off in a critical fashion. Mm-hmm. Most of the others start off with technology, of course, comes from God's gift of intelligence and wants us to till and keep the earth. But there are some difficulties, dangerous things to work through here. This one just starts with human relationships are at risk.
Yeah.
Sure, we want to embrace the opportunities offered by the technology in a real human way, but that does not mean overlooking the fact. So it's a different rhetorical approach.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, section 2 of the document. Do not renounce your ability to think.
This is the header. Something that line in particular is something the Pope has said elsewhere.
Has he? You're thinking of the National Catholic Youth Conference.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah, NCYC.
Okay. There has long been abundant evidence that algorithms designed to maximize engagement on social media, which is profitable for platforms, reward quick emotions and penalize more time-consuming human responses, such as the effort required to understand and reflect. By grouping people into bubbles of easy consensus and easy outrage, these algorithms reduce our ability to listen and think critically and increase social polarization. This is further exacerbated by a naive and unquestioning reliance on artificial intelligence as an omniscient friend, a source of all knowledge, an archive of every memory, an oracle of all advice. All of this can further erode our ability to think analytically and creatively, to understand meaning and distinguish between syntax and semantics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, and I think one thing that I've been frustrated about with our dear Catholic media, whom we love, is they kind of buried the lead on this one. Wait, that's not the term. They made their headlines badly. That's what I meant to say. Because there's quite a few, and I won't name names, but there's only really like 6 websites, so you can go look it up yourself, that headlined the announcement of this article with things like Pope cautions against overly affectionate chatbots, or Pope advises we don't treat chatbots as friends, this sort of thing. And I just want, not for the sake of the intelligence of our listeners, who are sharp, bright, and handsome, but for all the others, this is not what he says, right? So he's talking about a problem that is further exacerbated by a further naive and unquestioning reliance on artificial intelligence as friend, as source of knowledge, as archive of memory, as oracle for advice, which does not in itself, like you can make an argument, but it does not in itself mean that the problem is simply when you do those things with something simulating the voice, or when, as if the problem were only quantitative.
Well, yeah, I don't wish to put words in the Pope's mouth. Maybe we'll come down to it later, but the thing itself does appear designed to produce this result. Mm-hmm. One thing that just puzzles me is people on Twitter. Anything gets said by anyone, and somebody says, "Hey, Grok, is this true?" Mm-hmm. Which seems to be exactly this, treating it as a source of all knowledge, an oracle of all advice. It's like phone a friend on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, except that Grok isn't a person and isn't part of the conversation because it's not a person. And so you just turn to it, you're talking to a person, you're interacting with a thing. Well, you're really not talking to a person. It's Twitter. There's no conversation. But you turn and say, tell me, is this true? And it doesn't even know what truth is. So it's taking a bizarre step out of like, well, how about you do a little bit of research? No, I'm going to get this other thing to do it for me. It just strikes me as a bizarre, but it's how people actually use it.
No, I know.
And it's how it's designed to be used. I mean, someone programmed in the ability to do that on Twitter, to at Grok, and however it works, and then it answers you.
Yep.
Okay, continuing here. Although AI can provide support and assistance in managing tasks related to communication, in the long run, choosing to evade the effort of thinking for ourselves and settling for artificial statistical compilations threatens to diminish our cognitive, emotional, and communicative skills. I'll say. I mean, that's what he's talking about, evading the effort of thinking for ourselves.
Yeah.
And settling for not truth, not statements, not even words, but artificial statistical compilations.
Yeah.
Which we'll come back to again.
And I know that I'm kind of tooting the same horn here, but I would just like to note the coolness with which he suggests what AI can or should be used for. Although AI can provide support and assistance in managing tasks related to communication.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's distinct from communication.
Yes.
And for now, I just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
And we move on.
In recent years, artificial intelligence systems have increasingly taken control of the production of texts, music, and videos. This puts much of the human creative industry at risk of being dismantled and replaced with the label powered by AI, turning people into passive consumers of unthought thoughts and anonymous products without ownership or love.
That was the moment where I was like, he's an American. He's writing in English.
And I think you're right. I think this was written in English. I mean, can't prove it. But if you go, I did check. If you go look at the Italian, you will find on occasion in parentheses, it'll say, I don't know Italian, but something like in inglese, and then give the English word, which implies that they didn't know how to translate it. Just like, well, we all know you use in English over here.
You got some footprints there.
But I mean, as an actor myself, trained as an actor, this is quite true. It puts much of the human creative industry at risk of being dismantled and replaced. People are trying to have AI read audiobooks, even the Bible, which is, to my way of thinking, manifestly absurd.
I mean,
is AI going to write the books too? Like, is it going to write your novels? I mean, maybe some people think so, but
it has.
It's not a real human voice. It doesn't interpret things the way a human voice would interpret them. It just doesn't. It just can't. Especially when you get to the Bible, it's problematic because it's the word of God being read by a voice that isn't even real,
right?
Which you'd think is a theological issue. But he goes on to say here that this turns people, this isn't just a problem of unemployment of actors and painters and graphic designers and whatever. The problem is further that it turns people into passive consumers of unthought thoughts. That you're not communing with a person who actually thought the thing. Instead, it emerges from nowhere.
Yeah.
And you're treating it as though it's a thought, and it isn't. Consumers of anonymous products without ownership or love that did not emerge from some actual person's loving engagement with the world, that do not belong to a person who made them.
Yeah.
He goes on. Meanwhile, the masterpieces of human genius in the fields of music, art, and literature are being reduced to mere training grounds for machines. That's a statement that I don't think has occurred in the magisterium before. I didn't run across it.
Yeah. And I think what someone might say against it, or if to kind of get to the heart of it, is why is that the case? Because what seems unique about AI is that for as much as we describe it as a sort of form of mining human culture, of using what ought to be participated in, it does not apparently use up what it uses, or it does not mine away what it uses. So it's trained on all of Bach, Mozart, and Beethoven to produce a fugue. They still hang out, and now we have this new fugue, I guess. So is the Pope kind of overstepping in his rhetoric here to say that, because he says that these masterpieces are being reduced to mere training grounds? And I think there could just be that response like, well, I don't think they're being used as mere training grounds, but then why not use them as mere training grounds and enjoy them as what they are? Those two things can exist simultaneously. I know what I think.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they can in some sense, but I mean, there's an extension going on here of the scientific revolution from the beginning in the attempt to reduce everything to the purely quantitative. You're looking at all the great masterpieces of human culture, and you're asking, what are the similarities in terms of like frequency of word use or patterns or any of this sort of thing? You're not asking a question about meaning. You're asking a question purely about the outward material form, and you're trying to answer the question through quantitative means, not qualitative ones. And so this has been done with the creation itself. First of all, you're interacting, science from the beginning is interacting with the world God made purely at the quantitative level in terms of patterns and regularities and that sort of thing, instead of interacting with it in terms of meaning.
Yeah, like what is God saying with his creature here?
Yes, the difference here is that we are now interacting with our own output in this way.
Yeah.
And the difficulty of it seems to me, at least part of it, is that you start thinking about masterpieces of human culture as though they can be reduced to the level of the pattern, as though you've understood Shakespeare or Mozart or whatever, once the AI can replicate a thing that seems similar to it. And so actual human insight, what traditionally we refer to as genius in this field, is not relevant to the production of masterpieces. So all the people who produced masterpieces throughout history just become the means of us discovering the key to doing it automatically.
Ruben, you're on fire. It's like saying the beauty of my wife's face can be represented numerically by
the golden ratio,
variations of the golden ratio and the Fibonacci sequence and all these things. Therefore, the beauty of my wife's face is replicable in another creation that operates and uses and generates even out of those same patterns, right? Where you no longer see the reality as the source of pattern, you see pattern as a source of reality.
Yeah.
And it's a constant temptation. And I think the other thing that the Pope is pointing to is that the reduction does happen, as you say, in the application of the scientific revolution to our own creations, but also in the fertility of the human race as it hands down its culture from fathers to sons, from one generation to the next. Because human culture is not a guarantee, right? It goes back to the Pope's pillars of civilization can, in fact, be, what did he say, shifted? They're at risk. It is not a guarantee, like a cultural work, right? The Emperor Concerto, Beethoven. Is that number 3? Piano Concerto. It exists in a certain sense, and in another sense, it exists entirely precariously on the basis of someone playing it and someone listening to it and receiving it and knowing that it is beautiful. And
knowing that it's human.
Well, sure, yeah. But I think that would relate.
Well, sure, but it is conceivable that we end up in a future, right, in which people listen to Beethoven, but they also listen to a bunch of AI stuff, and they don't really notice a difference. It's just like, it's all sound. Mm-hmm. And you hear Beethoven, you go, well, wasn't it interesting that back then people could do that? Mm-hmm.
But I think what seems more likely, or what I've just seen on the ground, is that with the convenience of AI in generating and then summarizing and telling you about a work of literature or a piece of music, what you lose is the suffering that it requires to be able to appreciate it. Or you think you don't need it. You think you've already got it in some ways. Like it appears easily, handily done. What I mean is, if you think about in terms of music, which the Pope mentions here, anyone who has had children has, maybe not anyone, but you have this experience where it's like they don't actually appreciate the beauty of music. Like they come out.
No, they're just like hitting the piano.
Yeah, and then if you could put on Mozart, and they will prefer Baby Shark, and that's proper and normal. Like, that's not because your children are Philistines and barbarians; it's because they're children, right? But something has to happen in order for them to be able to receive what is a masterpiece, right? But part of learning to receive what our fathers have given us is hard, and it requires not summary, and it requires not approximations. It requires the work of your own experience, your own creation, your own trying and failing, and being taught. And if it's the case that we look at the treasure trove that we've been given from our own past and primarily relate to it as fuel by which we can power simulations of the same, right? Mm-hmm. Then I think we will gradually lose the ability to appreciate and to ourselves produce works of genius.
I mean, it seems as though, I don't know, it's not as though there's no question to be asked about, are there patterns here that are detectable? I mean, that's at its own level an interesting question. But in some way, it does seem that the very attempt to do this, to submit the masterpieces of human genius to being training grounds for machines, implies that something's already gone wrong with your ability to appreciate them. I mean, I know what Dietrich von Hildebrand would say. He'd just, in his Austrian way, straightforward, they call this an act of desecration. Oh, I was gonna that the level of barbarism to look at Shakespeare and go, I wonder what a computer would make of this. Like, that's not the correct human response to it. I mean, it's much more of a sort of burning bush kind of thing. It's like you're supposed to have reverence here, yes, and not just try to like strip mine it.
Leon Bloy, and we've both enjoyed his what is it?
Exegesis of Commonplaces.
Exegesis of Commonplaces. Got to thank all the boys at Wise Blood Books for putting that one out.
It's wild.
It's a wild ride. And one of his commonplaces is, I think it's entitled like The Beauty of Art, or a patron of the arts or something. And he says, well, a bourgeois man, of course, inevitably becomes a patron of the art. And he goes and talks about how tasteless, his fellow Frenchmen are. And then he ends up saying something very profound, which is that the desire is not, it's not simply that tastelessness and this crassness towards excellence is somehow a failure. Like what we have is a dullness. Instead, he says there is a desire for beauty to be laid low. Low as the dirt. It is vengeance upon beauty that we're seeing here. There is a hatred of it. Now, Bloy is bombastic, so I'm not gonna. But
yeah, one cannot simply adopt his opinions. They're not meant for that.
But I know, but there is this way. You spoke of reverence, where we live in a culture. I mean, read Kierkegaard's The Present Age for probably the best expression of this. But we live in a sort of world culture of anti-excellence. The belief, almost background to us, something we're basically raised in, that I could do anything, right? And if I see, and there's a lot going on. I'm talking about democracy, sure. I'm talking about political liberalism, yes. I'm talking about life in a mass society. Many things conspire to have us arrive with this habit. But I think there is a habit to say, in the face of excellence, that this is just something I could do given other circumstances. Now, there's a truth to that, right? Like, yes, you could have lived differently. You could have also had a different upbringing. You could have had a different life path or things like that. So I'm not totally discounting it. But there's something about the anger that gets provoked in people when they cannot adopt a stance of reverence to their fathers and to the masters among them, where they want to bring them low because they know they can't themselves rise. And they think of the even the cultural sphere as basically competitive. And so I just think that's a background that we bring to this, and there's a certain vindication or feeling of relief if we can say and really believe that the works of genius are in fact just an assembly of parts and not the production of a whole, not creation.
Yeah, it's not a matter of insight, it's a matter of statistical patterns.
Yes.
And the machine can do it.
And that's a comfort, right?
And now I can press the button on the machine and I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, let's continue with what the Pope says.
Sure, thank you.
The question at heart, however, is not what machines can or will be able to do, but what we can and will be able to achieve by growing in humanity and knowledge through the wise use of the powerful tools at our service. Individuals have always sought to acquire the fruits of knowledge without the effort required by commitment, research, and personal responsibility. However, renouncing creativity and surrendering our mental capacities and imagination to machines would mean burying the talents we have been given to grow as individuals in relation to God and others. It would mean hiding our faces and silencing our voices.
Mm-hmm.
I find this... I don't know that this has quite been said the same way in the magisterium before. The statement here, he's raising the problem of, if the machine can do it, will I become capable of doing it myself? Will I actually learn to think, to write, to produce images, whatever it is? What will we be able to achieve? Sure, with use of tools, whatever they may be, at our service, but you have to know it has to be you using the tool. Because if it is not, then you in some measure cease to exist as an individual person. I mean, he says this Leo said this at the National Catholic Youth Conference when he was answering the question from the student. I'm just going to quote from that here. Be prudent, be wise. Be careful that your use of AI does not limit your true human growth. Use it in such a way that if it disappeared tomorrow, you would still know how to think, how to create, how to act on your own, how to form authentic friendships. Remember, AI can never replace the unique gift that you are to the world. And that at some level is what we're talking about here, is people having a sense, perhaps an increasing sense, that they don't have anything to contribute because anything they might do could be done better by a machine, so they might as well have the machine do it. Mm-hmm. And what he says here is, this means burying the talents we have been given to grow as individuals in relation to God. That our own relating to reality, to God and to others, doesn't happen because we attempt to outsource it in a way that's actually impossible. And this is two things. I mean, on the one hand, it would be a tragedy if we don't do the one thing that is actually ours, so we don't be ourselves. The other thing is that he speaks here in terms of burying talents and failing to grow in relation to God. So what is this the language of?
Scripture?
Sin. It's the language of sin. Right. So on the one hand, it's a human tragedy for every person to whom it would occur for this reason, AI, or for some others. But it's also a sin. It's a sin against God, who gave you those talents, who created you as an individual to relate to him. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, I mean, that is quite plainly what he's doing here.
No,
this is language of sin.
Yeah, no, and I said scripture, but that's the passage, the parable in which Christ speaks of the one who buries his talents. It's obviously the sinner.
Yeah. So let's move on here. Section 3, to be or to pretend to be, simulating relationships and reality. That's the header. As we scroll through our feeds, it becomes increasingly difficult to determine whether we are interacting with other human beings or with bots or virtual influencers.
It's such a generous R. Like, I don't know if he's scrolling through his feed, but he's got on Twitter and such.
The less than transparent interventions of these automated agents influence public debates and people's choices. Chatbots based on large language models, LLMs, are proving to be surprisingly effective at covert persuasion through continuous optimization of personalized interaction, which is to say they figure out what you like and give you more of that. Flattery. The dialogic, adaptive, mimetic structure of these language models is capable of imitating human feelings and thus simulating a relationship. While this anthropomorphization can be entertaining, it is also deceptive, particularly for the most vulnerable. Because chatbots are excessively affectionate, as well as always present and accessible, they can become hidden architects of our emotional states, and so invade and occupy our sphere of intimacy. Now, I mean, this is... they can become hidden architects of our emotional states. And so invade and occupy our sphere of intimacy. I mean, what is the sphere of intimacy? It's the interiority of the person that is occupied by meaning, where you grasp the depth of things, but also by other people. And it seems, I mean, this is, you should begin to treat them as people, whether you know you're doing it or not. And they affect you in the way people would. This doesn't mean they're trying to do it. I find his language here does not indicate that. I mean, chatbots are excessively affectionate. He doesn't say because they can be.
Right, totally.
The way they work, their mimetic structure, adaptive structure, imitates human feelings and simulates a relationship.
Yeah.
And he says this anthropomorphization can be entertaining. It is also deceptive. It is deceptive.
No, I think it's very bold. It's a very bold description, and it also points to the objective reality of the thing, that we have a nature. We're not the kind of creatures that can have a sort of sovereign control over our emotional states, nor do we have a sort of sovereign control of the degree of trust that we give. It's elicited from us, right? Which is why lying can work, right? If someone can look you in the eye and tell you something false, you are very inclined to believe them if you don't have, suspicions for other reasons, because the display of the person in the face and in the voice, it is a contact, or it's our ability to know the interior in and through the exterior. Like that very mode of listening to, speaking with, hearing from is itself an affectionate state. Like it's not something that is a neutral state that then can become affectionate if you say things in a certain way. There is a scope for that, right? There is a way in which you could have a chatbot that's sort of just brusquely giving what appears to be information versus one that's, calling you like by nicknames and flirting with you, right? Like I understand that there's worse, right?
Yeah, there's better and worse here.
But the idea of being seen or being heard and being listened to, that your voice is itself an affectionate state, right? It is a state,
is a deeply human thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
of receptivity too.
So you have with Descartes this split of the world into two things. One of them is the pure material extension, which is entirely quantitative. It can be represented perfectly fine just through numbers. And then there's the human thing.
The res cogitans.
The res cogitans, the thinking thing. And whatever Descartes meant by that, I mean, it gets kind of taken up you get this in Augusto da Noche, Butoyone, it gets taken up by Pascal and other people in terms of like the heart having reasons that reason does not know. So the human thing becomes in some way that which is more than quantitative, and it becomes, you get Buber, you get phenomenology, this whole thing about the eye and the relationship of the eye, psychology, which is exploring this. But the significant thing in the human world, which gets distinguished, coming after Descartes from the rest of the world, is precisely the relationality and the desire for love. I mean, how does the human being make sense of the world? Through love, through being loved, through being received well by others. And so there's something, it's not, it seems to me, just a matter of the response of this or that, chatbot gives to you. You start feeling like it's a person. It's more that it establishes a different baseline for how relating to persons or person type things, what the baseline for that is. Because if it's all affectionate and giving you things and being adaptive and based on your inputs and desires, then it's very hard for actual people to live up to that.
Yeah.
And your basic level of like psychological health and experience, which is very much based on relationships and experiences you've had with other people, is now having sort of its baseline substituted by a thing that human beings cannot live up to. But that's a serious problem. I mean, the Pope doesn't say this, but he's at least, it seems to me, cracking a door open for that sort of a critique. I mean, I'm going to read Antiqua et Nova here, 62, paragraph 62, because it's relevant to what he's saying. In light of the above, it is clear why misrepresenting AI as a person should always be avoided. Now, the magisterium is very slow to make absolute statements of condemnation on things. It wants to be careful. So far as I can tell, in the realm of AI, the only absolute condemnation that has yet occurred is autonomous weapon systems. The Vatican just says, no, a robot should never be making a choice to kill people on its own. Should never happen, must be simply outlawed. Everything else, the statements are so far more hesitant. But this is pretty sweeping. Misrepresenting AI as a person should always be avoided. It is not to be done. It goes on to say doing so for fraudulent purposes is a grave ethical violation that could erode social trust.
Yes.
But I think even not for fraudulent purposes, there's a problem here.
Yeah, that's implied.
So it's talking mainly about deception.
Yes.
And normally intentional deception. That's Antiqua et Nova. Now, the Pope here, writing after this, seems to be saying that the deception is very frequent. It becomes increasingly difficult for us to determine whether we're interacting. So he's saying there is a lot of this deception going on, intentional or not. And he also says the very anthropomorphization of the LLMs is deceptive. That's a statement of essence. And they are excessively affectionate.
Yes.
And so the question, it seems to me, is to what degree is this really built into the essence of the thing? Because if it is, and he seems to be indicating that it is, then it falls under the previous condemnation. I mean, that's just there.
And maybe if we can just think along with him here, one of the difficulties that I always run into here is that it doesn't seem to me that you can avoid at some level imitating a person and thus simulating a relationship in the way the Pope's speaking of, if the thing appears to listen and to speak.
That does seem problematic. I mean, I have unfortunately spent a lot of time recently on automated phone lines. You call and a robot picks up, and frequently they have names now. They introduce themselves to you. They use the word I.
Do they say That's what I...
Sometimes they do. Or they get very...
It's our word. Is our word.
They get slangy sometimes.
Yeah.
Or they'll say things like, Sure, I can help you with that.
Mm-hmm.
When there's no I existing at all. So why would you want the thing to use the word I if there's no I, unless you wish to be deceptive?
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to come up with another reason.
Well, I'll tell you what people say, which is that it's more convenient and functional because we're language using creatures to have something that operates in this way.
Oh, yes, but I'm not sure the category of convenient and functional is the one we should be dealing with, because, again, it's not a question. It's not a technological problem. It's an anthropological one. But we need to keep going because we have more of this document.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Right.
Technology that exploits our need for relationships can lead not only to painful consequences in the lives of individuals, but also to damage in the social, cultural, and political fabric of society. This occurs when we substitute relationships with others for AI systems that catalog our thoughts, creating a world of mirrors around us, where everything is made in our image and likeness.
Oh, idolatry.
I don't want to pause here, but I have to. Antiqua et nova, I'll go back to that. I was reading from paragraph 62, paragraph 63. Conversely, if we replace relationships with God and with others with interactions with technology, we risk replacing authentic relationality with a lifeless image, which is...
That's some Old Testament stuff there.
Which is... but then it has citations of the Bible. Psalm 106:20. These are the two citations it gives. Psalm 106:20. They exchanged their glorious God for an image of a bull which eats grass. And Romans 1:22-23. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like a mortal human being and birds and animals and reptiles. So the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith is in fact citing biblical passages on idolatry. Antiqua et nova 63 in relation to replacing relationships with God and others with interactions with technology.
Do you think it's that bad?
All I know is that that's what the magisterium is saying. I mean, they are not... I don't think that a Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith is sitting around just waiting for opportunities to use those citations, you know? I think they're very cautious.
I would imagine, yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, you don't wish to precipitously interpret them, but like they're saying it for a reason.
Yeah. So we substitute when we substitute relationships with others for AI systems that catalog our thoughts, creating a world of mirrors around us, the flattery where everything is made in our image and likeness. That's where we stop.
Yes, we are thus robbed of the opportunity to encounter others who are always different from ourselves.
Yeah.
And with whom we can and must learn to relate.
Yeah.
Without embracing others, there can be no relationships or friendships. This is a major influence in the major emphasis in the magisterium over the past 60 years, especially the whole thing on dialogue and the other, which some people regard as leftist and just kind of fluffy.
No,
but
I love women, so I love dialogue and difference.
Vive la différence.
Mm-hmm.
But it's there's a basic Christian thing here, which is the relationship to God and the ability to actually relate to someone who is not you, who exceeds you, who transcends you. And the church has this emphasis, I think, against the background of a society which is increasingly reluctant to do this, which wishes to reduce difference to sameness and not allow the other to really be different and to really challenge me. Moving on. Another major challenge posed by these emerging systems is that of bias, which leads to acquiring and transmitting an altered perception of reality. AI models are shaped by the worldview of those who build them and can in turn impose these ways of thinking by reducing the stereotypes and prejudices present in the data they draw on. A lack of transparency in algorithmic programming, together with the inadequate social representation of data, tends to trap us in networks that manipulate our thoughts and prolong and intensify existing social inequalities and injustices.
I think that's in no need of commentary.
Yeah.
Okay.
The stakes are high. The power of simulation is such that AI can even deceive us by fabricating parallel realities.
In quotes, for if you're listening on just audio.
Usurping our faces and voices. We are immersed in a world of multidimensionality where it is becoming increasingly difficult to distinguish reality from fiction. I mean, that also in some way doesn't need commentary. I've been over the past few days looking at a bunch of AI images and videos, which is not a thing I normally do. But I started doing it because I ran across a few by accident and could not immediately tell they weren't real. It was only after a certain while I looked at them and thought, I don't think this is real. Mm-hmm. Further looking, I became sure it wasn't. So I thought that I should probably look at some more to get a better baseline for determining, because apparently I wasn't as good at it as I thought I was. I find the image of usurping our faces and voices here interesting.
Yeah.
That they belong to us, but we're allowing them to be taken by other things as if they are theirs, to the point where we don't know who's who and what's what and who said what and who did what. And continuing. Inaccuracy only exacerbates this problem. Systems that present statistical probability as knowledge are at best offering us approximations of the truth, which are sometimes outright delusions.
Mm-hmm.
Failure to verify sources, coupled with the crisis in field reporting, which involves constantly gathering and verifying information in the places where events occur, can further fuel disinformation, causing a growing sense of mistrust, confusion, and insecurity.
Yeah, and obviously that's the case. This is the kind of whole problem that the magisterium has had with fake news, because everyone does, but on hyperdrive here. But yeah. I would like to just point out that line there is helpful, that systems that present statistical probability as knowledge are at best offering us approximations of the truth. And the only thing I want to point to, it's something that I tried to make clear in my debate with Matthew Harvey Sanders, and maybe failed to do so in a way that was adequate to the task, which is that the Pope here is not saying that this is only a problem if the thing, the so-called sentence that comes out of this statistical machine is false. Right?
If it's presented as knowledge.
Right, as knowledge. So systems that present statistical probability as knowledge could be true knowledge. Like if you get a machine to say that Mark Barnes and G.K. Chesterton have the same birthday, May 29th, right? That would be true. But what the Pope is saying, like the sentence as I understand it, and give to it its reality as being a sentence, then it's true. But what the Pope is saying is that as generated
by mere statistical probability.
By statistical probability, it itself cannot transcend its own origin as statistical probability.
Correct.
And so when you look at it, true or false, you are looking at statistical probability posing as knowledge. And it never is anything more than an approximation of the truth.
Yes. Well, this is part of what is so absurd about people saying, "Hey, Grok, is this true?"
Right.
Well, all it knows is what people are saying, and it doesn't even know that. But it operates on the basis of things people have written, and who's written the most. And obviously, there are all kinds of different ways the interior of these things works, but they are almost always matters of statistical probability, and they come out with sentences which look like assertions of truth and knowledge, but are not. And so it does seem to be indicated that a proper use of these things would be very plain and upfront that what it is giving you is statistical probability.
Right.
Because that is what it's giving you. And so if that's what it's giving you, it should look like that's what it's giving you, because that's the way in which it becomes an honest and useful tool.
But not a convenient one, arguably.
Next section, a possible alliance. Behind this enormous invisible force that affects us all, there are only a handful of companies whose founders were recently presented as the creators of the Person of the Year 2025, or the architects of artificial intelligence.
Did you look this up? Is it Time Magazine?
I believe it was. Okay. Yeah. This gives rise to significant concerns about the oligopolistic control of algorithmic systems and artificial intelligence, which are capable of subtly influencing behavior and even rewriting human history, including the history of the church, often without us really realizing it. This is echoing Antiqua et Nova 53, which has similar questions about the oligopoly here of just a few companies running the whole thing.
Yep.
This question about even rewriting human history, even the history of the church, I don't know exactly what he means there.
Well,
does he mean past history or current history?
Well, I mean...
Or both.
Yeah, I mean, look, Leo, our man in Rome, has had a lot of deep fakes made of him. In fact, he was weirdly like a primary subject of them in a way that like some, bad actors, as they call them, were just spitting them out. And so he had all sorts of ones that picked up, especially in the like trad blogosphere, became, they all tended to this sort of like produce outrage through, like the intention seemed to be to produce outrage among traditionalists. That's basically how they looked. It was always like Pope Leo does something incredibly leftist, and it's a video of him apparently saying.
I missed all that, apparently.
Well, it was no fun. But it was all fake. So, like, this guy's got a dog in the fight. I mean, he is being abused. Like,
Francis actually in one address said this. He was talking about deep fake stuff, said, I, too, have been the subject of this.
Yeah.
Though not, I think, to the same degree as Leo, because the stuff wasn't quite as advanced. Right. But I wonder if even rewriting human history, including the history of the church, is a reference to people relying on AI for knowledge about what happened. Yeah. And it doesn't know what happened. It doesn't know anything. It produces statistical probabilities based on things people have written.
Yeah.
And so actual history gets replaced by reported history, by statistical representation of reported history.
Yeah.
And again, as I said at the beginning, the church has been very clear in her various interventions on this topic that the human intelligence is very deeply tied with human history, actual human experience.
Yep.
And I'll just say this about the magisterium too. I mean, statements of the magisterium are, the question is, what do human words mean, right? And obviously human words have a transcendent dimension where they touch truth, but they also come out of a context, the context of real human life and history. You're dealing with your circumstances. The things you say are related to what you are responding to.
Totally. And even every word is contingent because of history. Like, why is it that word for that thing?
Right. And I mean, this is something that annoys me. I'm annoyed by context. People talk about context as though it establishes meaning, which it does not. No, interiority establishes meaning. What I mean establishes meaning. Now, it's not, obviously there's the transcendent dimension where you mean more than you know you mean, but it's still, one speaks out of an actual contact with reality, a particular place and time. And context is simply the words that surround your words, but each word has a meaning in and of itself. You meant this, you did not mean that. Mm-hmm. And one can establish this, one can reach conclusions through looking at the words that surround your words. Or you can ask the person, what was in his interior when he said that? Mm-hmm. Context is simply evidence. Other things that betray what was really in the interior. Mm-hmm. And so a machine trying to fix the meaning of particular statements, which come from like all of human history, by means of just looking at context or repeated statements. It's like, well, you can repeat the same words and have them mean two totally different things. Like even a very simple sentence like, Jesus is the Son of God. Well, what do you mean by son? This was a big question in the early church between Arians and Orthodox Christians. You could also suppose that he was the physical Son of God, biological, and that would be another crazy heresy. But you just look at the sentence, and it could have multiple meanings. It depends on what the person meant when he said it. Mm-hmm. So there's an inclination, it seems to me, in the very nature of these systems toward a positivism that leaves out the depth and interiority which actually establishes the meaning of human statements. And so when you're using it to interpret history, you're not allowing the historical particularity of each of the people and his own life to be the depth that establishes the meaning of the statements.
Yeah.
And so you inevitably misrepresent it.
Yeah.
As I say, I don't know what he meant, but that's one thing he might have meant.
Well, I mean, it would fit with this idea of burying and hiding our voices and our faces, because he establishes early on that the voice and the face, which belongs to our body, which is precisely the evidence and glory of the fact that we are unrepeatable and individual in this place and this time. And from that particularity...
and we relate to real others who lived in a real place, who came before us in real ways, and to level it all down to statistical patterns or repetitions of exteriority is to not actually live in relation to one's ancestors, to one's past.
And oneself, ultimately.
And to oneself, because that's what you are.
Yeah.
Continuing. The task laid before us is not to stop digital innovation, but rather to guide it and to be aware of its ambivalent nature. It is up to each of us to raise our voice in defense of human persons so that we can truly assimilate these tools as allies. We must defend human persons with our voices, I might add, the individual voices, which is a much bigger emphasis in Francis' writings on the question, who puts a great deal of emphasis on the fact that there are many different people and cultures, and what you need is the wisdom of everyone, because the thing exists in a world full of everyone. And if one is to really respect human beings, that means respecting the individuality of the various human beings who are actually there. It is up to each of us to raise our voice in defense of human persons with our individual grasp of things, so that we can truly assimilate these tools as allies. Maybe we'll come back to that later. This alliance is possible, but it needs to be based on 3 pillars: responsibility, cooperation, and education. First of all, responsibility. Depending on the role we play, responsibility can be understood as honesty, transparency, courage, farsightedness, the duty of sharing knowledge, or the right to be informed. As a general principle, however, no one can elude personal responsibility for the future we are building. So be farsighted, have courage, speak honestly, be transparent about what lies under what you're saying, share your knowledge, insist you have a right to be informed. For those at the helm of online platforms, this means ensuring that their business strategies are not guided solely by the criterion of profit maximization, but also by a forward-looking vision that considers the common good, just as each of them cares for the well-being of their own children.
I loved that part.
It's really striking.
So could we pause there
Yes.
for just a moment? So I'll just say 2 things. Maybe the less controversial first, so that it doesn't get lost, which is that I think that the principle of considering the common good by imagining how you would care for your own children is just a great principle. I think we should totally take it to heart. And one of the reasons I particularly like it in this instance is that children are the ones that to whom we are responsible to help them grow, right? So this when we ask, all right, how do we serve the common good with this technology? The question must be, how do I help these people grow? The people using it
As actual human beings.
In the fullness of who and what they are, right?
Yeah.
Which is a very different question than obviously how do I profit from them, but then still different even from how can I give them a convenience, or how can I safeguard them even? Those things might relate, but if we, in another place, in his address to the Builders AI Forum, Pope Leo says that we need to consider what kind of people we are becoming through our use of this technology. And I find this principle relates directly to that. You are growing people. Like through your power, you stand as father to children, and they are becoming a certain kind of people in and through your use of that power. Therefore, use it well. And the second reason I really like this as a principle is particular to the technocratic oligarchy that we have, especially in our nation, but it's global, which is there's a notable, I mean, many people have noted this with more wit than I will, but there's a notable difference between how our tech billionaires treat their own children and how they treat the rest of the world. So it's just a typically known thing that, that the leaders of these few companies that own most of our wealth and technology, they put their kids in Montessori schools, right? While, public schools in America are, I don't know if they're still doing it, but we're trying to have a screen per child. They're entering them into elite schools where you're not even allowed to see a screen, right? They're able to have like a kind of enclosure in which the manipulative aspects of technology does not affect their own children, right? Whereas the products that they're making and selling, right, are precisely the products that they're avoiding letting their children use. And I've spoken with Catholics who think the same thing, who are involved in the production of AI products, and will tell me things like, "Well, I wouldn't let my kid use this." And I think what's missing is several things are missing, right? One is a nice analogical sense of childhood, where you're never not a child. Like everyone is related to others who are as fathers to them, for whom others in authority are responsible for their growth. Others who have power over them ought to use that power for the sake of their growth. And the idea that there's like this one population for whom that doesn't relate because they're all older maybe, or they're just not immediately present to you, I think is...
Yeah, I mean, the question is why you wouldn't let your children use it. Like you could have a job making chainsaws, and you wouldn't let your children use it, and it's mostly because they're children.
Yes.
Like they're 5 years old and they don't need a chainsaw.
I know.
And so I suppose they might be looking at it and going, well, when they're adults, they'll know how to use this responsibly.
But the ubiquitousness of the technology, it's...
Yeah, you're forcing everyone else's children to use it. That's for sure.
Like, if we lived in
whether they choose to or not, they experience it. I mean, they're seeing images. They don't know who made them. Mm-hmm. Whether anyone in fact made them. Mm-hmm. They don't know whether it's real or it happened, or they're reading paragraphs. I mean, they're
and
children.
This,
I mean, I think now we're kind of in a period, and with the magisterium as well. It's like the Victorian period when photography was invented, and you look at Victorian photographs, and they just took a lot of work to produce. And they're not so great looking necessarily. So the ones that exist tend to be a little artistic, and it was a rare thing. So people were coming to grips with it. Now, millions and millions and millions of photographs are at your fingertips all day long. The average person probably sees more human beings online in the course of a day than in person. Mm-hmm. You probably see, in fact, more trees online in the course of a day than in person. If you're, working from an office or whatever, and especially if you're commuting to that office in a subway or something.
Yeah, sure.
Depending on where you live. I mean, or you work from home. You don't leave your home because it's cold outside. And
tell us how you really feel, Ruben.
Well, I mean, this is just like no one could foresee that in the Victorian
period. Yeah.
And so I think that even with the magisterial understanding of AI, we're sort of looking at like first indications. And so they're trying to come to grips, trying to express certain things, but they really don't know what this will turn into yet.
Sure, yeah.
And it's the same way with everything. Like you don't want, developers maybe don't want their children to use it, but everyone else's children, we will now have children growing up where they read things that were not written by people, and they learn to write on the basis of things that no one wrote. Mm-hmm. And that's unimaginable. I'm old enough, just barely old enough to remember there not being an internet. Mm-hmm. that's not the same thing even.
Right.
Though it is quite different to have grown up without internet, which I didn't. I just remember it.
Yeah.
And to have grown up with it, or with cell phones, or whatever it is. But to grow up learning your own language, not from human beings.
Yeah.
That's a genie that's very hard to put back in the bottle here.
And I think that's why this. Okay, it's just one sentence. Why the second clause is attached to the first.
Yes.
I don't think it's a list.
No.
Because he says, for those at the helm of online platforms, this means ensuring that their business strategies are not guided solely by the criterion of profit maximization. Well, this is in part a problem because within the form of venture capitalism, in the way that these machines are being made, having a mass product has to be the goal. These things don't make money unless everyone uses them, right? This isn't like we're producing like beautiful lampshades or something. This is something that has, in almost every iteration, almost every startup fails to produce a profit. And so you have a lot of money invested in a future, but you only get the payout. Ultimately, obviously, you can just trade on the stock market for a long time, but you only really get the payout if it grows and expands. And that means that everyone's children are affected because of the very structure of the for-profit companies, how they're organized to produce machines. Like, you can't say, "Oh, I'm building a factory. We're going to mass produce Beanie Weenies in cans, but it's okay if only a few people like it." Well, that doesn't work because your investment in the factory is too large. Like you have to mass produce by the logic of the thing. And in a similar way, if we're going to invest, I mean, granted, I think the massive government subsidization and the way that having the kind of assured use of AI for automated weapon systems kind of bankrolls it in a way that it's hard to tell what will happen next if the government just keeps on funding the whole thing. But in any case, like all I'm trying to say at this point is that relationship to other people's children, right, is not something that you can use the form of profit maximization and then avoid the result of mass production, mass use. It's on everyone's phone. It's everywhere, which is just what we've seen. I mean, we're not predicting here. This is like it has taken over the main habitual functions of the internet already. Like the internet is not a place where you can utilize it without great effort and avoid unthought thoughts and approximations of the human face and voice. Like it's just, it's
right. But the basic principle of taking the common good, which is can be a very sort of amorphous, like what is that concept, and saying, well, how do you care about your children? What sort of world do you wish them to live in? A human world. That's the common good we're talking about. This, of course, only works if people do, in fact, have children and do, in fact, care about them, or at least care about some children. You brought in a quotation you found taped to the wall this morning.
Taped to the wall of the bathroom. That's right.
Which is John Ruskin. When we build, let us think that we build forever. Let it not be for present delight, nor for present use alone. Let it be such work as our descendants will thank us for. And let us think as we lay stone on stone that a time is to come when those stones will be held sacred because our hands have touched them, and that men will say as they look upon the labor, "See, this our father did for us." One may wonder if that's exactly what we're doing.
Well, it's almost like there's a perversity to it, right? Because if the worst happens and we do what the Pope is begging us not to do, which is forget, what did he say? Replace ourselves, forget how to think. Then the infrastructure we are building now will not be comprehended by the generations that use it as an artifact, right? So we will, unfortunately, be held to be sacred, but not sacred in the sense of the reverence with which you hold the masters that went before you, and you say, "Wow, you did this. Let me learn." Instead, if we create a world that's operatable by button and we make our human culture fuel for these sorts of convenient novel generations, then we will disappear. Like we will not appear in the works we have made. It will it'll appear to be its own animal. Its
Well,
own
that is one of the
thing running.
difficulties that the popes keep bringing up in this regard is who's responsible.
Sure.
If it does a thing, who do we blame for it? And the very fact that you're not sure also means you're not sure who to praise.
Yeah.
If you were to praise somebody, which does begin to raise questions about whether, in what sense is it really a human work?
Yeah.
Obviously it is one, but like, I don't know, there's something going on here where it's a human work that seems to be designed to efface human responsibility and human work itself. But anyway, let's go on here. We need to hoof it through this document.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We're kind of pushing your time, guys. Thank you so much for being with us. This is how you listen to popes. Not the commentary stuff, but you read the whole thing.
The same responsibility is also required of national legislators and supranational regulators, whose task it is to ensure respect for human dignity. Appropriate regulations can protect individuals from forming emotional attachments to chatbots and curb the spread of false, manipulative, or misleading content, safeguarding the integrity of information as opposed to its deceptive simulation.
Great.
Now, exactly how government is going to produce a state in which the fact that anybody can create fake images and videos and voices is how the government can prevent that from misleading people is hard for me to imagine.
Sure.
Clearly, whatever intervention would happen, there would have to be very fundamental. With chatbots forming emotional relationships, attachments, you could say, well, just ban the ones that call you sweetie and whatever. And I don't know what they're doing out there. I don't want to know. But banning just those is maybe not sufficient. Popes can make sometimes very broad, vague comments, and what exactly the content of that is only sorts out as we move on through history.
Yeah, because they're the Pope of the Church, they're not like
yeah.
Like what we are doing, like in listening to him, is part of it.
Is this a fundamental? Is he asking for something very fundamental, or is he asking for something very superficial? Like you really can't quite determine from this. And it may be that nothing comes of it because in the future the popes have nothing to say because we missed the boat.
Sure.
You know, it's happened before. Media and communication companies, for their part, cannot allow algorithms designed to capture a few extra seconds of attention at any cost to prevail over their professional values, which are aimed at seeking the truth.
It's the most generous thing anyone's ever said to journalists.
Media and communication companies. Yeah. Public trust is earned by accuracy and transparency, not by chasing after any kind of possible engagement. Content, now this is wild. Content generated or manipulated by AI are to be clearly marked and distinguished from content created by humans. Once again, this is a sweeping and absolute statement coming from the Pope.
Totally.
It is a moral necessity, apparently, that content generated or manipulated by AI are to be clearly marked and distinguished from content created by humans. How even theoretically is that to be accomplished? Because the thing itself is designed to produce something that you cannot tell apart from a human creation.
Yeah, and the way that...
So is it just supposed to watermark it?
I mean, that's what like folks like Magisterium AI have done with their chatbots is... And I don't think it's adequate even to this, which is that you've got your sort of web page, it's on your computer screen, and it gives you a little thing at the bottom that says these responses are AI generated. When in doubt, consult a human or something like that.
When in doubt,
you should watch it. Anyways, but I think there's a problem even here because it's like if what he's saying is true about the way that they are affectionate and the way that they create the simulation of relationship, then it's still true and operative, even if some part of the corner of my screen is saying, by the way, this is AI. It's like, no, every single sentence it generates would need to be watermarked, because if we're going to say that content generated by AI, then it can't just be the machine itself is known to be AI. The content it generates every time it I hate the word generates. Every time it generates, I don't hate the word generates. I hate that I have to use the word in this context.
In this context, yeah. But
it has to be watermarked.
To be clearly marked and distinguished.
No, he's giving us a
snapping a watermark on an image is one thing, and it can't. I don't know what this would mean, and like it's clearly not the actual guiding principle.
And yet, it is mitzvah.
The authorship and sovereign ownership of the work of journalists and other content creators must be protected. Information is a public good. A constructive and meaningful public service is not based on opacity, but on the transparency of sources, the inclusion of those involved, and high-quality standards.
All right. Again, this is the difficulty, and this is not a critique, because this is the difficulty we all face, and the Pope's facing it with us. But you can't have sovereign ownership over the work of anyone and have it being reduced to the training ground for a machine, which uses it for the sake of its patterns. You can't have both.
Yeah,
it's you have sovereign ownership of your words, and all of your words that you've ever produced are being used to generate novel sentences.
Yes, I mean the church has actually made several statements. I can't think if it's Francis or if it's Antiqua et Nova on the need for much stronger regulations of data privacy.
Sure.
That things should not just be being taken by corporations. And I think that we didn't realize we needed that privacy because we didn't realize they could do certain things with them. And now they can, and they just kind of own it. It's just open to them. So, yes, you're right. The church is asserting, I can't remember where right now, that should not be going on.
Well, and there's something, this is all right, bracket. This is a little conspiratorial. However, there's copyright laws, right? And especially around the church documents. You're a press man. You've tried to get permissions from presses. You've tried to get You have, in fact, gotten permissions from many presses, even from the Vatican. And it's, number one, something you got to eventually pay for, or at least get explicit permission as a gift in order to use. Now, what we've done in the Catholic world with chatbots, we've essentially, by sleight of hand, gotten over that entire process by having access, but no longer can it be said that we are using the words of any of the texts, right? So if you're publishing a magazine, you're publishing something, and you do more than a sentence quote, you technically become obliged by laws, national and international, to get that thing, like you have to have permission.
Yeah.
All right, now, presenting from whether this is good, it is the law. But now with chatbots, you have the ability to sort of access all of these texts and evade all copyright laws and all responsibility for them, because technically everything that's generated is not a quote.
Technically.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is where it gets a little fishy. So a closed bracket, that's the end of the conspiratorial chatbots as mode of getting around copyright law, but there we go.
We are all called upon to let me see where we are here. Okay, so moving on to his second pillar for a possible alliance, possible way to assimilate these tools as allies. So the first one was responsibility. The second one is cooperation. We are all called upon to cooperate. No sector can tackle the challenge of steering digital innovation and AI governance alone. Safeguards must therefore be put in place. All stakeholders, from the tech industry to legislators, from creative companies to academia, from artists to journalists and educators, must be involved in building and implementing informed and responsible digital citizenship. Sure. Third pillar, education. Education aims to do precisely this, to increase our personal ability to think critically, evaluate whether our sources are trustworthy, and the possible interests behind selecting the information we have access to understand the psychological mechanisms involved, and to enable our families, communities, and associations to develop practical criteria for a healthier and more responsible culture of communication.
You know I didn't like that part.
What didn't you like about it?
No, I'm sorry. I shouldn't say that. Leo, I do like it. What I don't like is that I know how this sort of thing gets read by people who have a lot of money invested in AI taking off and just, being the way. And it gets read as if we can just know what we're doing, know how it works, know what ways we're being manipulated, then it's okay.
Then you're not manipulated anymore.
Right. And I know that's not what the Pope means, obviously, but it is the sort of
it would be great to have more clarity about that.
That's all.
Continuing. For this reason, it is increasingly urgent to introduce media information and AI literacy, that is media literacy, information literacy, AI literacy, into education systems at all levels, as already promoted by some civil institutions. As Catholics, we can and must contribute to this effort so that individuals, especially young people, can acquire critical thinking skills and grow in freedom of spirit. This literacy should also be integrated into broader lifelong learning initiatives, reaching out to older adults and marginalized members of society who often feel excluded and powerless in the face of rapid technological change. There are previous papal statements on this sort of thing, such as Francis here. Education in the use of forms of artificial intelligence should aim above all at promoting critical thinking, which Leo mentions. Users of all ages, but especially the young, need to develop a discerning approach to the use of data and content collected on the web or produced by artificial intelligence systems. And I really don't know what that could mean other than that they should learn a healthy distrust of it. Like, what does critical thinking in regard to AI mean other than...
No, I think that
thinking that probably is not telling me the exact truth here.
You're right, and you know, there's a way in which the College of St. Joseph the Worker is
what is a discerning approach to content produced by artificial intelligence systems other than...
Sorry, Ruben just made a face, which if you're only listening on audio, it's a good face. No, the whole, like, I could see reading this and saying, okay, how do we develop in young people critical thinking in relationship to AI and freedom in regards to it? Well, it seems obvious that the big problem of AI is that it produces fake stuff. Then the thing they need is to know what real stuff is like in order to be able to judge the fake. And yeah, you need a certain basic education in terms of like, hey, there are images that are fake. There are these things, sentences that are in fact AI generated. That kind of literacy, I totally understand. But I think this can be taken, and maybe I have unnecessary fears, but it can be taken in sort of like we're going to have literacy as a form of adopting the thing, but for us, it's literacy about,
it's as though it's a unilateral solution. It's all you need.
All you need. Especially tempting right now because the federal government is offering all sorts of money for colleges, especially, but I'm sure it's happening everywhere, to develop some kind of AI program, right? So then you'll see Catholic colleges falling one after another like dominoes and developing in their communications departments or whatever AI literacy programs, right? But if we imagine,
what does it mean?
Right. If we imagine that's like a room where you're sternly told about the dangers of AI, like, come on.
Yeah, like it's driver ed.
And also, if the thing is habit forming, this is the other question I have, which is if the thing is habit forming, then it's habit forming in the investigation of it. Like, I don't get to learn about how ChatGPT works without talking to something that calls itself I for a prolonged period of time and being flattered by it.
Yeah.
That is part of... which is simply to say, we do need more. We need to understand what this could look like. I know that in the College of St. Joseph the Worker, the kind of literacy that we're working to establish in our students is in and through total bans.
Yeah, I don't know that that's sufficient.
No.
Because,
but I mean,
because you do in fact encounter the thing in the world, whether you want to or not.
Right, but let me clarify, because maybe that's too quick. What I don't mean is like don't think about it, don't pretend it's not real, bury your head in the sand. But what I mean is what we are going to provide and what you're going to experience in my classes is the absence of it, and you're going to experience. And we're going to talk about the absence, which is
because you do need to know what the real is.
This is what teaching is. This is what learning is. This is how you think. This is how you fail to adequately express yourself in word and what you learn from it. And we do this thing. And there's something so silly about gaining all sorts of glory from opposition. It's like, that's actually just the thing that good teachers in schools do, period, right? But then all of a sudden you have this ability to be a hero, right? Because now you're doing the same thing, right? And the same thing on a chalkboard, but you're doing it against AI and you're saving the world because you're real and you're giving an encounter with reality. That's going to be a big reactionary temptation that we're going to see in the church, which is like a lot of phony like selling of basic humanity as rebellion against the powers that be. And that's why I brought you on. I'm prone to that. I'm prone to that. So
there's the question of the teacher is one that comes up a lot in Francis' writings on AI. The danger that the teacher is not treated as a human being who's a mentor and in a relationship with you. And education is no longer a growing into humanity, but it's just an accumulation of facts, and the teacher might as well be a chatbot. So I mean that whole relationship is an important thing that Magisterium has spoken about. It's not in this message.
Sure.
We're
so close to the end. We are real close to the end. You're right.
Media information and AI literacy will help individuals avoid conforming to the anthropomorphizing tendencies of AI systems and enable them to treat these systems as tools and always employ external validation of the sources provided by AI systems, which could be inaccurate or incorrect. I will pause here to say this is very close to what you were to the problem you were having. It does really seem as though the Pope is saying, if we just have enough literacy, we'll treat them like tools. It doesn't matter what they are intrinsically. We'll manage to treat them as tools. I think that is an ambiguity here in this document that does not exist to the same degree in some previous ones. But that's how statements are. Some are clearer than others. The thing to which I wish to draw attention, though, is he says that we will always employ external validation of the sources provided by AI systems. Now, why would we do that? Well, that would be because it's not actually providing knowledge. And again, the phraseology of the sentence isn't enough to determine this, but it seems like what we're talking about here is some sort of moral absolute for the proper use of the thing, which raises the question of why the systems aren't just designed to provide sources. But then I guess you'd have to have sources for the providing of sources so that you get a recursion. But
and because they feed on you and what you give, you can also give them the sources to cite. This is true.
But the Pope is clearly thinking about it as a tool that provides you with a statistical approximation that you then go check.
Yeah, sure.
But this is not how we in fact use them. It's not how they are in fact designed to be used.
That's right.
Literacy will also allow for better privacy and data protection through increased awareness of security parameters and complaint options. It is important to educate ourselves and others about how to use AI intentionally, and in this context to protect our image, photos and audio, our face and our voice, to prevent them from being used in the creation of harmful content and behaviors such as digital fraud, cyberbullying, and deepfakes, which violate people's privacy and intimacy without their consent. Just as the Industrial Revolution called for basic literacy to enable people to respond to new developments, so too does the digital revolution require digital literacy, along with humanistic and cultural education. To understand how algorithms shape our perception of reality, how AI biases work, what mechanisms determine the presence of certain content in our feeds, and what economic principles and models of the AI economy, and what the economic principles and models of the AI economy are, and how they might change. Again, there's the same ambiguity here, but I would just point out he takes digital literacy, says we need this, and then says immediately, along with humanistic and cultural education. So again, it's not technical. It's first of all anthropological. And this is the baseline of the Vatican reflections on AI, so far as I can tell so far, that there's a deep and profound difference between human intelligence and artificial intelligence. And the only way at all in which AI can be used well or develop well or become a good, helpful thing is if we, in fact, become intelligent human beings. And that's significant because the church could just throw down principles and say, do it like this, do it like that. That's not sufficient. What you need is human beings who can make decisions. So the superiority of the humanistic and cultural over the technical is the basic principle, because the church is trying to say, the church is dealing with an exploding thing which is highly unpredictable. So the basic advice the church is giving is, please, please, please become actual human beings and make your decisions on this basis.
Sure.
Conclusion. We need faces and voices to speak for people again. That seems to indicate that they already don't. Continuing. We need to cherish the gift of communication as the deepest truth of humanity, to which all technological innovation should also be oriented. In outlining these reflections, I thank all those who are working toward the goals delineated above, and I cordially bless all those who work for the common good through the media.
Received.
So, I mean, this is... I'll just say one thing in conclusion. We can get out of here.
All right.
This is overall much more critical than previous magisterial statements have been.
Yep.
It's not entirely so. It does talk about potential uses of AI and this sort of thing. Previous magisterial statements, I think especially Francis' message for the World Day of Communication a few years ago, begins by saying, well, AI means many things. I know you have a particular interest in chatbots. I haven't actually read your stuff on it.
Come on, man.
But I know it's there.
Why do I work so hard to impress you? And you don't even read it.
But chatbots are not all we mean by AI. There
No,
are
of course
many
not.
sorts of things.
Yes.
And so when the Vatican says AI, it means it's a very broad thing, not many things.
Yes.
There are only a few statements on chatbots particularly. But the... So when the Vatican adopts the basic posture of like, technology is a good thing, generally speaking, we want human people to advance in knowledge of how to interact with the world and, till and keep the earth. That's because it's a broad thing. The specifics in different cases, different forms of AI, different applications are different.
Yeah.
But there's one, and I think partly the critical nature of this is because of more recent developments. Francis was writing a few years ago, mainly. But there's one particular thing I wish to say from Francis here, because I think it's also a basic principle the Vatican is working with. There's sort of an ambiguity in some of the statements, like Leo has it here, about the views of the people who make it are embodied in the systems. And so it might seem like he's just saying, your goals are embodied in the thing, and it therefore creates social inequalities to put you in charge. I think that there's much more than that going on. If you go back to John Paul II, introducing the category of structures of sin, I think if you look at what he's actually doing there, I have an article in New Polity Magazine recently on this. It's an attempt to take the categories of the spirit, of the human drama of relating to God and maybe sinning, frequently sinning, and apply those categories to the productions of man. Because man is a spirit, so the things he produces are formed by his spirituality. Francis, in his Message for the World Day of Peace, that's what it is, January 2024, says this: we need to remember that scientific research and technological innovations are not disembodied and neutral, but subject to cultural influences. As fully human activities, the directions they take reflect choices conditioned by personal, social, and cultural values in any given age. The same must be said of the results they produce, precisely as the fruit of specifically human ways of approaching the world around us. The latter always have an ethical dimension, closely linked to decisions made by those who design their experimentation and direct their production toward particular objectives. This is also the case with forms of artificial intelligence. There's a way of reading that statement that just goes, cultural values, and we know what ethics is, it's just doing good things. I think if you look at the magisterium as a whole, this is very, very close to what John Paul is saying with structures of sin. That cultural values, Laudato Si, Francis talks about the scientific method as itself a technique of control and manipulation of an allegedly formless thing that you just give a form to. Well, that's a cultural thing. He's talking about the scientific method is a cultural value we have.
Yeah.
And not all of our cultural values are necessarily good. Our culture is a fundamentally spiritual thing, as he discusses. And he frequently, in this particular document, World Day of Peace 2024, talks about scientific research. He talks about the development of things, not just their uses as being formed in certain ways. And so it seems to me that the multifaceted problem the Vatican is dealing with, the magisterium generally speaking is dealing with, is that on the one hand there is the use, there is the cultural suffusion, but there's also the question of the way in which the things are produced. Mm-hmm. And this runs back in some sense to the cultural value we place on the scientific method as manipulation and control. Yeah. So I would just suggest that the magisterium is indicating here, at least in certain places, that a proper AI, the sort of positive emphasis that Leo still has even in this document, might be something very different than what we are generally calling AI. Because as a broad phenomenon of computers being able to run very sophisticated statistical calculations and do, self-learning and whatever, that's not necessarily, it cannot just be identified with chatbots and making images. On the one hand, we do have those, and we must learn how to interact with them because they're there, and they're a danger and a difficulty, and in some sense, there's obviously some sort of good that can be done with them. But I think that in the question of AI actually producing good results, the popes are much more fundamental. The criticism is much more fundamental. Even when they talk about ethics, they're not talking about use. Francis, when he talks about it, is always, first of all, discussing development, research itself, the very science that comes first, and the cultural dimension, which in the culture we live in is one where the scientific method is divorced from any sort of spiritual concern or concern about meaning. Mm-hmm. That would be my overall comment.
Yeah, no, I think that is very depressing, but checks out. I mean, look, I've read Michael Hamby,
and so I think it has gotten more critical. One reason might be that as the concrete applications come out, they don't live up to what the popes would like. And so it starts looking more critical and also starts looking more like have literacy deal with the uses because that's sort of where we are.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be. I mean, the very idea that you can run statistical calculations on large like patterns and that sort of that's interesting.
Yeah,
there's something good that can be done with that.
I think so. Yeah, and
as long as from the very beginning you're integrating it into a broader sense of what it is to be human and a common good in which, a world in which your children could live and be human. Is that what you're thinking about from the very get-go when you do the research and development?
Right.
Instead of it coming in a later step of we already know what AI is, now let's use it for this or that.
I think we just have to understand that as a really difficult question because it seems to me that the operation of LLM technology is the breaking down of wholes into discrete parts.
Well, the whole of human thought.
Yes, there's that.
That's what's new about it. Francis says this. It's not like technology before was an extension of the arms or the hands, and then it was an extension of words like media, and now it's he says a support for thinking. Yeah. It's taking human thought itself and working with it.
Yeah.
But in a way that's not actually thought or not actually human.
No, it is the unthought thoughts. And
so there's an intrinsic difficulty there.
I think so. I mean, and it seems to me that where there are large bodies of data which are not authored by persons, even if they are caused by it. So I use an example of like a massive dump of X-ray images or something like that. Like, yes, human beings caused them, but you don't look at an X-ray and say like, this was an expression of a thought, right? Obviously not. Well, then it seems like there's a certain fittingness to probabilistic generation of answers to queries about that data, if that makes sense. Like where there's a body of data that can be patterned in the way that LLM technology operates, it doesn't seem like we risk this this fake and irresponsible simulation of the voice and face. But where what we begin with is the voice and the face and the words of people, it just, maybe I'm just despairing or not creative enough to see the way that that can be used given the nature of the technology that isn't in and through the advancement of the technocratic and the scientific method as you describe it, which I think in large part is just to view nature as a bunch of parts. So that's just that's the difficulty. That's what we face. I think you're right to say that is the fundamental critique, which Leo says. I mean, he's asking the question of who are we becoming? And to a large extent, who we become comes from who we currently are, and who we currently are is scientismistic. That's
I mean, there is not here or elsewhere, so far at least, I mean, who can say, a papal condemnation of chatbots, but you do have serious fundamental questions being raised about the essence of the thing in relation to the human face and voice and the simulation of relationship and the colonization of our interiority, which have to be answered. And they have to be answered by the way in which the things are conceived and developed from the beginning, and they have to be actual answers to those questions.
Yeah, you're totally right. Folks, thank you for listening to the Pope, first of all. And we hope that our comments and our responses to the Holy Father were helps and not hindrances to your own hearing and listening to your Holy Father. I think I don't have anything by way of conclusion besides there it is, and that we should all pray for the Pope as he takes on really the fatherhood, the shepherding of all of us in the face of this very unique and often bleak situation. I mean, I don't in some ways envy his work, but I am really glad to have him doing it. So, Ruben, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Till next time, everyone.